everyone. Welcome. My name is Zenobia Gottschalk, and I am the SVP of Communications at Hedera. Hedera is a next-gen distributed public ledger, which is green and fast and the most used public ledger in the world today. Today, we are here to talk about DeFi, and we have brought together a panel of folks who are both in traditional finance as well as outside of it, because as we see, DeFi is engaging people from all parts of the ecosystem, both traditional financial services, government, as well as new innovative companies that are working to make DeFi truly distributed and for everyone. So with me today, I have Andrew Gastworth, who is the Chief Innovation Officer at DLA Piper. Hello, Andrew, welcome.
Thank you.
And Shannon Coble, who is the Chief of Staff and co-founder at Suku by Citizens Reserve. Hi, Shannon.
Hello.
And last but not least, we have Gideon Russo, Distributed Ledger Technology Innovation Analyst from Standard Bank Group.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. All right, so as I mentioned up front, we want to make sure that this panel covers traditional financial services as well as outside of that. So I'm going to pose this question to all three of you. Perhaps Gideon, you can start. What role do you see existing institutions in each of your segments playing in the development of DeFi solutions? So for example, things like CBDCs, cross-border payments, tokenization. How are you looking at this new worldview from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Genevieve. Look, we are looking at a number of initiatives and looking at specifically stablecoins and the use of stablecoins as a mechanism to enable banking the unbanked populations, especially in Africa. Very large portions of the populations are in an informal work context, and they just can't afford, they don't earn enough money to justify the management and opening of a traditional bank account. So we believe that things like stablecoin is a major step forward to enable us to provide solutions to allow banking access for a lot of the currently unbanked. Similarly, I think in Africa, we are in a unique situation that because a lot of legacy systems and infrastructure doesn't exist, it's a lot easier for us to introduce new technology and distributed ledger capabilities. So we actively pursuing and researching the possibility of creating a distributed financial marketplace across the African continent where we operate. And because there's not a lot of legacy and not a lot of regulatory involvement in many of these existing contexts, it does enable us to make quite a bit of progress quite quickly.
Very exciting. And Andrew, from your perspective, DLA has been sort of at the forefront in terms of innovation, not just, sort of traditional legal guidance here, but as you help navigate this both internally and for your clients, what do you see, your role in this DeFi future?
So DLA has built a platform that's a DLT-based platform called Toko, and it's an asset tokenization platform. And although there's a lot to be dealt with from a regulatory standpoint, compliance standpoint, what we're really looking to do across a number of different industries as well as different marketplaces and regions is really create more of a democratization of asset tokenization. So, we see that there are a lot of issues that we need to overcome, but we really are trying to combine really a unique offering of legal advice and guidance to allow our clients to be able to participate in this new realm. But at the same time, also having the technology platform to be able to produce those tokens and then work with regulated bodies to put them into the marketplace.
Wonderful. And Shannon, Suku has so much green space to go after. As you guys think about your role in a DeFi economy as an upstart, how do you decide what to go after?
Yeah, so around the world right now, 1.7 billion individuals are unbanked. And we see this as a real opportunity to help create an inclusive world. Peer-to-peer payments really make it possible for more participants to be involved in the global economy, where historically those opportunities were really only available for those with a bank account. At Suku, we provide visibility into supply chains. And one of the things that we see is that small suppliers can really benefit from decentralized finance solutions. Oftentimes, these supply chain participants are ignored and really left out of the equation because they don't have access to capital and they don't have access to financial services when a lot of times they're the ones that need it the most. So, hey, let's look at a fisherman on the Gulf of Mexico. He's been hit by a hurricane. He is not able to get equipment to go back to work. And what we provide here at Suku is a DeFi solution that would help these participants when they need it the most. So one of the things that we really see that it's important in any technology is the use of an incentive model. And this helps in the adoption and really helps with the growth of the product. So one of the things that we would like to do is we would reward these participants with incentives for providing supply chain data about their products. They could then use that incentive in order to, as collateral for a loan that they could then be able to use to be able to get equipment from in situations that may potentially have resulted in them without these type of services to not be able to get back to work, to be able to help support themselves as individuals and help support themselves and their families and start to give back to their business and then the global economy on a whole.
Zenobia, could I do a follow-up both on things that Shannon and Gideon had covered? Because I think it strikes an interesting balance. So Gideon was talking about the lack of legacy infrastructure that really made it possible for them to go ahead and really take advantage of the marketplace and provide these type of services and drive adoption. And then Shannon talked about also that adoption or change management has to be incentive driven, and also that really needs to be in place. And, one of the juxtapositions, if you will, that I see in the United States, at least, is we have an aging population. And a lot of them are not necessarily technically savvy. We see this even in support calls coming into financial institutions of, I can't get into my portal or I can't see my accounts. How do I do this? Many don't have smart devices or don't know how to download additional apps and services onto their devices. So this is definitely, I think, in some of the countries, US included, one of the biggest challenges in driving this adoption is actually overcoming that lack of savvy for the technology and also overcoming those legacy infrastructures. So very interesting to hear the other perspectives.
Sorry, maybe just a different perspective also coming through from there. Something that's actually quite interesting in Africa is that in countries like Kenya and Uganda, the adoption of technology and the adoption of mobile devices and the growth of technology-based solutions in the financial world is actually quite phenomenal. In many cases, we're leapfrogging many of the sort of legacy telephone networks, for instance, going directly into mobile and the latest sort of data sort of networks and capabilities that are available there. And it's phenomenal to see just how people are actually adopting the technology. So I think in Africa, it's actually a little bit different from what I understand from your perspective from America. There's actually quite an interest and a keenness to actually get familiar with the technology and able to sort of help themselves in many cases.
I think that is so great to hear, Gideon. One of the things I also want to note, it's kind of ironic how the greatest advantage of decentralized finance solution is the open access. But if they don't have access to the technology and aren't able to use it, it's really unfortunate because people aren't able to benefit from this technology. And this is something that we're seeing across the board with some of the supply chain participants that we have talked to and engaged with. One of the technologies that we wanted to make sure too at Suku that we did have a technology that would be able to grant access to participants, anyone with a cell phone. It doesn't have to be a cell phone. So we created a tool called Text Me Crypto, which essentially allows anyone with a cell phone to send and receive crypto just through an SMS message. So that we feel is really, really important. We need to make sure to understand the advantages and the adoption of this technology, but we also first and foremost need to understand the challenges really to allow for adoption of these tools to be set forth.
Yeah, I would also add to that, if you look at, again, the United States, there's a significant part of the population that does not have access to broadband. And on top of that, their wireless access is very poor. And, you look at a number of other countries, they are not relying on broadband as much as they are relying really on the wireless technologies. And again, the adoption of that makes it possible. So, it really is interesting, again, to see that we have so many challenges, here in the United States to drive this adoption. And I also did want to bring up that one of the great things about DeFi and these financial solutions is that in addition to providing banking to the unbanked and providing services, it also, on the sell side or in the traditional investment side, it really drives liquidity into marketplaces that did not traditionally have liquidity, like, for instance, real estate. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here, both on the buy side and on the sell side of the marketplaces to drive a lot more business. And if you look at the numbers of what the marketplace is believed to be in the trillions and trillions of dollars, that holds true or rings true.
Thanks all. And Andy, while we are on that topic, Toko is tokenizing assets of all kinds. And, I think it's really interesting that you are seeing that across different verticals and different segments. Can you give us any color in terms of, which ones have been perhaps surprising to you or interesting, and maybe why you're seeing such a wide swath of assets being tokenized?
Sure. So, I think you'd be hard pressed to find an industry or a sector that can't benefit from, a DLT type of solution, and especially related to how finance is managed within that. Certainly, with our platform, there are fungible tokens that we can generate, as well as NFTs. I do want to reiterate again that this is in its infancy or nascency at this point. There's many challenges across regions and geographies. Regulatory bodies, obviously differ from region to region. Who can participate in a given region may be limited. All of the KYC and the AML has to be accounted for, and that can differ from region to region. And then, the final part of it is broker dealer and custodian availability in different regions is going to be another piece of the puzzle that has to be put together. But, working as a large global law firm and having this platform, we are establishing these relationships where we're able to put those puzzle pieces together. And what we've seen from a use case perspective, it really has been all over the map. Obviously, real estate is a very large one. Infrastructure, debt restructuring is another big area that we look at. Commodities or natural resources, being able to tokenize those. Artwork from an NFT perspective. IP. I think some of the most interesting ones that I've seen are for sports contracts, which is growing, and there's a lot of interest around that. It's really kind of also a debt restructure, and possibly the most interesting one I've seen lately. There was just one for tokenizing racehorses in Hong Kong. So that one I did not see coming. But what's really neat, and it kind of feeds the business itself, is that we have people coming every day with, "Hey, could I do this?" And generally the answer is yes, providing that obviously the regulatory and compliance can be addressed. But it's really a fascinating and growing area.
Yes, I have to say I did not think of racehorses as high on that list, but I guess, any high value asset, that makes a lot of sense. Gideon, Andrew had touched a little bit on, sort of the regulatory environment and how that differs by jurisdiction. I know that you and Standard Bank have been doing a lot of work in the CBDC space, and obviously that has you're working all across the continent. You're working with different jurisdictions, both within Africa as well as globally. Can you share with us a little bit about what you have learned from some of that as you progress?
Yeah, I think the one thing that is quite interesting when you start thinking around the CBDC constructs, what different countries are looking at, is the different flavors that exist in all of the different regions. I mean, if you look at, for instance, China, the way that they're looking at it, and I know there's not a lot of information available on it at the moment, but the CBDC that they effectively creating is very much aimed at keeping control of their local monetary system. So it's a very big driver for what they're trying to do. I think some flavors of that is happening quite a lot across Africa as well. A lot of the countries, because they are exposed to a large degree to exchange control fluctuations and risk of assets leaving a country is quite a significant risk to many of the countries. A big part of the investigations into CBDC is to try and understand how they can maintain the existing controls that they have in the fiat world, but still enable a digital currency. And I think it will probably take some time to mature. I think some of these initiatives will probably sort of change quite a lot, and it will probably take some time before people become comfortable with a context where a digital currency is a digital currency and can be used globally with a lot less restrictions. But I mean, interestingly, Nigeria launched their CBDC in a production context roughly a month ago. So they live with the CBDC currency, and they started facilitating payments up to the value of, I think, about $1,000 equivalent through that ecosystem, and it's growing. It is making quite a significant difference in the economy. And a big part of their motivation was also from a regulatory perspective to create a mechanism for the unbanked population that they have to be able to get access to a banking type capability and functionality. It does pose a lot of questions, I guess, for banks, because if central banks start to create CBDC currencies that can effectively enable any person in that economy to have a bank account with the central bank itself, then a big part of what a bank does is effectively not needed by most people in the economy. So it's part of what we're thinking about quite a lot at Standard Bank, is to try and understand and anticipate where things are going, and trying to see how we can adapt our business and processes to remain relevant in this new economic context that inevitably is going to happen.
And can I add to that too, real quick? Definitely agree 100%. The shift to CBDCs is inevitable. And you mentioned China's digital currency, and I just thought it was just amazing and very interesting, the adoption that's actually happening. They have over 750 lottery chosen participants that are actually participating in their trial of their currency, with over 5 billion already in transactions. And they're already speaking that they're going to potentially be using this currency as a currency at the Olympics. It's a real glimpse into the future of CBDCs, but I just wanted to throw those numbers out there because I think it's very, it's crystal ball into the future of CBDCs.
And, I would just ask the group, are there any other countries that you see, particularly innovating in this space, or characteristics of countries that, are being more forward and progressive in terms of CBDCs?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to throw certainly Estonia out there with the work that they've done, not necessarily on the CBDC, but with distributed ledger technology. It goes beyond just the financial aspects of it. It really moves into the social and the policy aspects. So if all of your medical records, all of your healthcare, all of your education, all of your banking can really be protected by blockchain and cryptography, but at the same time, you have the convenience of being able to get all of your services, basically with multi-factor authentication, but one extra piece of card or equipment that you carry around with you everywhere you go. That's been a real success. They call it the digital republic, protected by blockchain would be Estonia. I think that having a younger population, again, having good wireless coverage, really is key to that. And it probably is easier to start off in a smaller country than a larger country, just by being able to drive adoption. But back to what Shannon said, the incentive has to be there for all of the parties involved. If it's punitive, it's not going to happen. And if you look at the U.S. with our concerns over privacy on a number of different issues, or I don't want the government to do this or that to control my life. You've heard that many times. This is something that's another challenge in the U.S. that I think has been overcome in other countries, and people have realized the value and the convenience of what they can do if they're willing to entrust their privacy to cryptography and a digital ledger technology.
Absolutely. And Shannon, as I was looking at the Suku website, Suku DeFi, states its mission is to harness the power of decentralized finance technology to help create a more inclusive world. I think each of you have given some great examples of that. But how do you see this playing out, and how do you see that role of sort of individual ownership of not only their financial world, but as Andrew pointed out, their identity and those types of things all sort of tying together under this umbrella?
Yeah, I think one of the things to note that's very important is decentralized finance solutions aren't meant to be a replacement to the current solutions out there. They're an option. They're an options that are for those that are actually looking for a replacement, or option for those that do not have an option. And the best way to look at that is to look at some of the advantages that these solutions provide. Transparency for those that want to have more visibility into data or to have more control of their data themselves, and also want more trust potentially. Also, open access is another big component, which really allows for this more inclusive world, that there's no discrimination on who the users are using these solutions. You can be from anywhere, everywhere. If you need financial aid, that you have it there. So at Suku, that is what we really want to. We're looking at who we can help the most. We want to make sure that our solution provides that opportunity for them. We want to use our tech to help enable this more inclusive world. So that's really, really important. One thing I also want to know that there is an onus on decentralized solutions to really to figure out how to achieve compliance with regulations. Andrew started speaking a little bit about that earlier, and there's a lot of importance in that and having these discussions. And there's many projects right now that are working on solutions, and DLA is a perfect example of that, to really help companies achieve compliance with regulations without sacrificing the core values of crypto, user privacy, and having control of your own data. Civic is a perfect example when it comes with digital identity and KYC. We also have CipherTrace that helps pinpoint transactions that potentially may have come from illegal funds. Another example is TaxBit, which help companies that are dealing with crypto to be able to automate tax services and tax reporting. So we see all of these components as super important at Suku. Compliance always first and foremost to really allow for these discussions to be having with regulators. If they know that companies are being compliant, they're more open to having these discussions and allowing for the adoption to happen.
I would also add into that if you look at driving adoption, there also has to be a business case or a return on investment, and I think this is where government and also industry really comes into play. I know I always know where my credit cards are, and at least twice a year the credit card is stolen, and somebody has run up $10,000 worth of false charges, which get taken off of my card. But ultimately, there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse that goes on. There's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in services, as well as finance, also in government, not just in commercial. So, if you look at ways where industry and government could cut down on that, there's probably a very strong business case. And then really the other thing too is if you could cut down on the production of the physical currency, the fiat currency that you're generating, also what does that cost, and is that part of the equation being replaced by digital? So I think there's a lot of opportunity if people really put their minds to generating that business case where they can help push adoption from all sides.
And Gideon, from your perspective, any other areas where you are seeing, the use of DLT within Standard Bank or sort of across your ecosystem?
Yeah, there's two use cases that I'm personally quite excited about. We're busy working on a supply chain linked sort of solution, but it's more about financing previously disadvantaged businesses in the distribution of fuel throughout the economy. So the current situation is that many of these entities, businesses, just don't have the business background and credit scores to get access to finance, and the debt and capital markets business within Standard Bank actually has come up with quite a unique solution to use a distributed ledger type technology to solve this problem and give access to this context in that sort of ecosystem. So that's something that I'm very excited about. And other thing is just something that I'm personally also very involved in is the creation of this global financial marketplace where you can trade derivatives and bonds and everything, and it enables even small and medium enterprises to come into that debt market, being able to issue debt into that context. And at the moment, with the current infrastructure, those entities just can't afford doing it. The cost of doing something like that is just too massive. So creating a context where small and medium enterprises can actually participate, issue instruments into the debt market, and having a pool of millions of people that potentially invest in those instruments is just something that I'm extremely excited about.
So many exciting use cases here. And as we wrap up, this area is evolving so quickly. I would just ask each of you, maybe starting with you, Andrew, any other interesting, developments that you're seeing or things that you might be watching for?
From my view, it's changing every day. Again, the exciting part is what use cases are coming to the table. A lot of them are also on the pro bono side, where we have the ability again to help people, and from a social aspect, that's really exciting. But I think the main thing that we need to keep our eye on is really cooperating and partnering with regulators and making sure that compliance is there as we move forward, so that these solutions really can become more flexible. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough go. But I think that's where everybody will be focusing over the next couple of years.
Shannon, how about you?
No, I love how these solutions, as Gideon said, are being used, Andrew said, are being used to really help people, and how governments are really stepping up when crises are happening. A perfect example is the Bahama and their Bahamian sand dollar, and how they rolled it out as a result of the December 2020 hurricane and the $3.4 billion in damages in their country. So they knew they needed a solution to be able to get money to their citizens quickly. And we're seeing these discussions happening across the board, across the world with governments on how they can use CBDCs to help their citizens and individuals. So that for me is really promising that these solutions can and are being used for the good.
I love that story. And Gideon, how about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think living in Africa and sort of, I know that there's a context, sort of in the African context, that we sort of live in the bush and the animals and lions are sort of walking around our stoops. But I mean, conservation is a big problem. I mean, with all of the rhino poaching and I mean, elephant poaching, all of the things that are going on around us, there's actually a lot of potential to use DLT capabilities to create financing and funding for the protection of these animals on an ongoing basis. So we are sort of looking at sort of a few opportunities around that and trying to figure out how we can try and facilitate a few of these initiatives. But I think that's something that is also going to be interesting sort of development over the next couple of years. And I think in general, that the whole eco-responsibility context, which is a global thing in terms of power consumption, sort of moving to a more sustainable power utilization, the way that DLT can facilitate a lot of the adoption processes around it, I think is something that can really change the world in the next few years.
Well, thank you all so much. My favorite part of my job is hearing all of the different ways that distributed ledger technology can help improve the world that we live in. And, you know, I think this has been a great microcosm of that, talking particularly about how DeFi, distributed finance, can do that. So thank you all so much for your time and for sharing those stories. And we are so excited to see how this area develops.
Thank you.
Great talking to you guys.